We've looked at how to use z-scores to identify outliers, how to compare two individuals from different populations with different means and standard deviations, and now we're going to look at how to combine z-scores to get an overall total to kind of find a winner. So an example of this, there's an Olympic sport called the pentathlon that is composed of fencing, shooting, swimming, riding, and cross-country running. So you think about those, some of those are measured in a time component, some of those might be points scored against an opponent. And so how do you combine those different pieces to figure out who the overall winner is? So it turns out you can use z-scores to do that. So here's the example we're going to work on. Chris, Jamie, and Stacy are applying for a job. The selection process consists of both a written questionnaire and an oral interview that has been administered to all three candidates, and their scores are listed below. So this is a common thing when you're interviewing for your first jobs out of college. So for example, when I applied to be a professor at Western, I submitted my resume or CV, and then they had a list of questions like, what's your philosophy on using technology in the classroom? Or tell us how you create engaging lessons, right? So they had a list of questions, and based on my resume and my answers to that, they decided who their top applicants were, and then they invited them for an oral interview, right? So actually, it was over Zoom. And so they asked me more questions, different questions. And so then, based on both my written answers, my resume, and this interview, that's how they made their hiring choice. Okay, so that's a typical thing you'll run into. Each component, written and interview, will be weighted at 50% of the candidate's final score. So they're evenly weighted. You could certainly weight them any different way you want, just like your grade, but we'll do 50-50 on this. And it's known that the written score is normally distributed with a mean of 90 and a standard deviation of 8. And the interview is also normally distributed mean of 82 and standard deviation of 11. All right, so before I turn you loose to figure out who has the best overall total and who we should offer this job to, I want to show you a shortcut. So since we're making several calculations based on the same mean and standard deviation, there is a nice way to use the Rossman Chance app to do that. So let me hop over to that and I'll show you that shortcut here. All right, so here we are back in the Rossman Chance app. And so I want to take a look at this first one for the written score. So it says it has a mean of 90 and a standard deviation of 8. So I'm going to put that in and scale to fit. And then Chris has a score of 98. So I'll click that first box and I'll put 98 in for X. And then instead of looking at the probability, there's this box in the middle or this column in the middle that we've been ignoring. And notice it has the letter Z on it. So it's actually going to tell you what the Z-score is. So the Z-score for 98 is Z equals 1. If we did Jamie's, so Jamie had a score of 91, and I push enter, now I have a z-score of 0.125. So this is a faster way to get through those z-scores. So what I'd love for you to do is go ahead and pause the video, find the z-scores, and determine who we should offer the job to. All right, here we are back. Sorry, that was a little longer of a pause than I meant to give you, but here I have the z-scores. So Chris, we had z equals 1. For the written, Jamie, z is 0.125, and Stacy was -1. And then on the interviews, that in-person part, Chris had a -1, Jamie had 0.091, and Stacy had 0.909. So if we add those up, Chris had a total combined score of 0. Jamie has a combined score of 0.216, and Stacy has a combined score of -0.910. So in this case, we have two scores that are away from the mean. So either Jamie or Stacy. And the way that we're going to look at this is we need to determine which direction is better. So if you're running a race, being the fastest, so having a lower or a negative z-score is a good thing. In this is a lot like getting a grade. So the more points you have or the higher your score, the better you did. So in this case, then Jamie is going to be our winner with a only positive score on the board. So that's who we should offer the job to.